I'm Brad Nein, and I'm Tormenta Strong.
I'm Misael Garzón, and I'm Tormenta Strong.
Hey, everybody. This is Brad back in action with another deep dive into one of our staff members at Tormenta FC Academy. Today, we're with Misael Garzón. This past year, he was the Magenta director, running 7 teams.
Yep, 7 teams.
And come the springtime, coached 2 NPL teams, and then the pesky quarantine came into play, and we've had to step back a little bit and do a lot of stuff online, and he's leading the charge in a lot of those things and what he does, and it also affected his high school season. So it's been a disappointing spring, but it's something we have to do for the health of everybody. Like I said, we're going to go into we're going to learn all about Misa today, where he's from, what he does, how he got here. It's his origin story. And Misa, it's great to see you. Can you let me know? So give me some details just about what you do now. So kind of your Tormenta piece and your high school piece. What are those main things that you do with soccer?
Okay, so here at Tormenta, I'm the Magenta director. So I'm in charge of our Magenta program, which this past fall consisted of 7 teams in the select age group, the U13 to U19, all compete in state leagues. And then this spring, I was able to coach 2 of our NPL teams, our 2004 and 2005 boys NPL groups, before the quarantine shut down. And in my high school, I'm the boys varsity head coach at May River High School in Bluffton, South Carolina. This would have been our 4th season that we would have been playing as a program.
It's all amazing. It's your family at home, super supportive of what you do, your wife and kids. Mm-hmm. It's been fun to work with you over the last year and really get to know you and see what makes you tick and learn about all your successes and the drive you have on the field. What I really want to know is where this whole story started. Why do you love soccer the way you do? Why do you love the mentorship piece? Let me know where you were, Misa 5 years old, Misa when you were 10 years old. How did all this come about?
I was born in Venezuela, in the capital city of Caracas. That's where my family's from. So my dad is Colombian, and they're all from Colombia. My mom's Venezuelan, and we're all from Venezuela. So my love of soccer came from my dad's side, the Colombian side. Obviously, I was born in '87, so Colombia was starting to come around as a soccer nation. Venezuela, not so much. Venezuela's more of a baseball nation. So my mom loved baseball, my dad loved soccer. I instantly got attracted to soccer. So we migrated to the United States in 1994, right after the World Cup. That's probably where my love of soccer really blossomed. I was 6 years old at the time. Yeah, six years old. And I followed the World Cup. I had a poster on my wall. I was following up every score. I had a little thing where you can put the brackets and putting stuff in. I was doing all that. And then when we migrated, obviously that was one thing that I had in common from home was soccer. So
what do you remember? What do you remember about that time? Was that a hard part for your family, or was that like just something people do in that part of the world?
No, it was very hard. So at that time, the Venezuela then is nothing like the Venezuela now. Back then, Venezuela was probably the second most prosperous nation in the Americas, behind the United States. But my parents felt that we had a better opportunity here in the States. So you figure 6 years old, it's my mom, my dad, myself, and my younger brother, who was 5 at the time, going into a country that we know nothing about, a language that we don't speak, cultures that we know nothing about, being the only family that we have here. Like, it wasn't like I had family here, we could go stay at, a friend or a cousin. There was no family here. We were the first in our family to migrate over. So it was very hard. It was some very hard times. I think me being young then, I took it better. So, for my parents, it was much more difficult, getting assimilated to the culture, learning English and figuring out the culture where we were, and quickly adapting was helpful, I think, in me being young. But it was very hard, not having family to go to or visit, and going from what you've known all your life to something completely different and completely new.
So I'm guessing you flew here?
Yes.
So you fly here, you get off the airplane, this is your new country. Where do you land? What do you do? How does your family get started in as settlers almost in this new world?
So we first landed in Miami. That's where we got checked in. And then we actually ended up going to Texas. We were in Texas for maybe a year in a small town called Victoria, Texas, which is about an hour south of Houston. So we were there for, I want to say a year. I don't remember the time. And the good thing there was that there was some semblance of Spanish, because it's a lot of, Chicanos and Mexican culture there. So there was that familiarity, but still, things that you don't normally see back home in Venezuela, like, the grocery stores back then, it was like HEB was like the big grocery chain, or Hess gas stations. And, you got all these different things that we're not accustomed to, spicy foods. We don't have spicy food in Venezuela. So doing that, tacos, all these different things that are normal here, for us, it was like, this is unknown. And like, one of the funniest memories I have is, I love rice, and we went to a Shoney's. I've never been to a buffet style restaurant before. So we're like, we can eat all this food as much as we want. It was like mind blowing to me. And I see a big batch of white rice, and I love rice. And for the Latin folks, our rice is a little bit different because we put salt in it. It's a little bit tastier. It has taste. Whereas the American rice, you got to accompany it with something.
Sure.
I got a big thing of rice, and I take a bite and I almost threw up. And that was like, this is America. Welcome to America. So that was like the first thing that comes to mind with America, was that experience. But no, it was a lot of getting accustomed to many things that are so normal here that aren't normal back home. And that took a while, people, families, kids, having friends, even the classroom. The way they taught here in America was vastly different than how we learn in Venezuela. So there were some things I had to adjust in order to learn, just basic math and ELA and all these other subjects that we had to take, on top of trying to learn the language at the same time.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. It was, when I moved from Maryland to Georgia, it was a culture shock. So I can't even imagine moving from one country to the other is like. It just, everything changes, everything's so different. Now you spent some time in Texas, and then do you then end up in South Carolina, or what prompts that move?
We moved to Savannah. So I actually went to elementary school in Savannah at Georgetown Elementary, and then I went to Southwest Middle School. So we lived on the south side of Savannah in Georgetown.
Wow! So all those things were there when you were growing up.
Yes,
that was before land here.
Yeah, and like, if I drive through there now, it's completely different than what I was when I was living there. So I went there, and then I was there through that time. So elementary school, middle school. I built a core of friends, that we had, because it's such a big neighborhood, a very diverse neighborhood. So I go from one extreme of having mostly Texans folks, who are their own culture in themselves, to a very diverse environment where you have people of different nationalities, different backgrounds. Right. My friendship circle was, people from different backgrounds. So I was already in a very diverse environment. And then my parents bought a house in Hardyville, my freshman year in high school. So I go from being a freshman at Windsor Forest High School, a school of 1,500 students at the time, a very diverse background, to a rural, poverty-driven county, and a high school that is maybe 400 students total, and it's 90% African American and 8% white and 2% Hispanic. So it was a complete culture shock. So here we go again, as a freshman in high school, going to a complete different culture that I'm not used to much, an environment that I'm not around. So that's how I ended up here. And then, I went to high school there. I graduated from Jasper County High School. In 2005, I went to school at Sacramento State University. And then once I finished school and left school, I just stayed in the area. So, I've been in this area probably, I call this area home. The Low Country's my home, because this is where I've been the most of my life. So.
Sure. Yeah, I call Savannah home too. I've been here for 12 years now. Now let me rewind it back, because you jumped over some important things, I think. Now, You're in high school. Did you play soccer growing up, or did you play other sports, or what was your youth sports piece like?
Soccer and basketball.
Okay.
Soccer was my primary sport.
Were you the point guard on the team there?
Yes, I was the kamikaze guy who drives to the basket because he can't shoot. So I just did that, But no, soccer was my main sport. I played soccer at middle school. We had a middle school team. Elementary school, we would play around with our friends. But in the neighborhood that I was in, soccer wasn't a big thing. But we had a basketball court. So that's why I wanted to pick up basketball. And while I was in Texas in '94, this is the time that the Houston Rockets won the championship.
Sure.
So I became a fan of the Rockets, Hakeem Olajuwon, Clyde Drexler, that team. So I started following basketball. And then when we moved to Georgia, football was huge. So I started learning about football. But we played soccer. And then in high school, I played varsity soccer all 4 years at Jasper County High School. Now, mind you, my first year of high school here at Jasper County was the first year we had a soccer program. And so it's a first year program. And we had, I think, 7 players on the team, 7 or 8 players. So all season, it was 7 to 8 of us going out there to play soccer, getting our tails kicked, but enjoying it like nothing. And, we're out there working hard, playing 8 players, and we're losing 10, 12 nothing every game minimum. Sure. But we enjoyed it. So it wasn't the winning that kept me there. It was just the camaraderie that we had, and it was our thing, and we were starting something new. And, and I think my sophomore year, we got up to 10 players, 11 players maybe. And we scored our first ever program goal my sophomore year. We were losing 15-0, and we're playing like the 4th string of a team. And I break away, and the keeper comes out, and I just chip it maybe 25 yards over because that's all I could do. And we scored a goal. It was 15-1, and we celebrated like we won the World Cup. And that was the only goal we scored that year. And then my junior year, we started getting better. We had players who moved from other parts of the country that played at academies. This was my 2004 is the first time I heard of an academy. There was this family from Nevada that moved, and they played an academy there. And they moved here, very good soccer players. We actually had subs on the bench. We actually competed in games. So we still didn't win.
Sure.
But we were competing. We go from losing 10-0 to losing 5-2 or, 3-2, against. And then my senior year, was the first time we won a game, and we actually had a winning record, and we didn't make it to the playoffs because we didn't qualify. We didn't apply because we only played 8 games. But that was my high school career. So I was all region player all 4 years. I was an all-state player my senior years in high school. So I was able to be successful, but there was never this, academy and doing soccer outside of school. It was just in school. And then basketball was the hobby. In our yard, in our house, we had a basketball goal.
Sure.
So our friends and I would play basketball at school. But if you know the history of Jasper County High School basketball, it's a top tier program in the state. There was no way I'm making that team. So I thought about trying out 1 year, but that was pretty much my growing up playing.
Now, me not knowing much about as much as you do about South Carolina soccer, does Jasper County still have a program?
Yeah, so Jasper County is now Ridgeland Hardeeville High School.
Okay.
And so the year after I graduated was the first year they went to the playoffs, and they won the first round playoff game. So they have a decent program. They've been to the playoffs. They've found some success, but it's such a rural area that it's hit or miss. Last year they didn't have a very good year. This year they had, I think before the season got canceled, they won their first 2 games, I believe. So it's some talent here, but it's a small program.
Now, within that, did you find a time where you were, maybe did you ever, within your coaching chronological time frame, when did you say, wow, coaching might be the thing for me? Was this a high school thing, or was that a later on thing?
I think the seeds were planted in high school. So I was a captain all 4 years. So you have that leadership role. Obviously, as I explained, the circumstance of the team, we're not a successful team. We're not a very talented team. We're not playing to win. We're just playing for the pleasure of the game and looking to get better. My junior year, this is probably the coach that first impacted me the most. It was our JROTC instructor. He's a Puerto Rican guy. He was new to the area, to our school. We needed a soccer coach, or otherwise we wouldn't have a team. And this man is a baseball fanatic. He knows as much about soccer as I do about a random sport and some, he didn't know anything about soccer. So, but he took on the job because he wanted us to have a team, because he knew that this was something that would keep us out of trouble, keep us busy, and we were passionate about it. So he took on the task, and he didn't know anything. So he leaned on us, the more experienced players, to help run practices and, get some kind of session going where, game planning and drills and all this. Meanwhile, he's on the sideline reading a book about soccer, literally had in his hand, pretty much like Soccer for Dummies, where he's learning about the game. He didn't know about offsides, didn't know anything. Right. But the fact that this man was able to say, you know what, I know nothing about this, but I'm willing to learn, to give you guys a chance to play something that you love. That was my first impact in coaching, and me having to, him having that trust in us to say, I need you guys to help me run practice, coach games, talk to your players. I think that's where the seed was planted. But at that time, there was never an intention of, I want to be a soccer coach. For me, soccer was something I enjoyed playing and watching. I never wanted to make something more out of it because there just wasn't an avenue for me. But it wasn't maybe until a few years later, as the next year when I was in college, I would come home and I found myself on the sidelines with him, helping him out. Oh. And I was his assistant coach that year. Even though I was going back and forth to school, I would come to practice when I could, come to games when I could, help him out. So that was when it really started that, hey, I can do something. And it wasn't even for, I want to be a great top level soccer coach. It was, this man was able to do something to give kids a chance to do something they enjoy. I like that. I want to do that. I want to be able to do that. And I know soccer. I love soccer. Maybe I could find something and helping back my alma mater, my community, and being able to give kids the game.
Yeah, that's huge. Giving back the way people gave back to you and making it a cherished time on the field. And it sounds like that's the beginning of your kind of relationship development that you've become famous at Tormenta for in the academy. As far as I'm learning about you, soccer might not be your number one, but I'm going to learn all about you. And throughout this time, as I interact with you, soccer, I hope you play it your whole life and come back and coach and do some of the same things that, you did and you learned about.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the thing. Like, it's my passion for coaching was never results driven. It was always, how can I impartition something of my knowledge to the next generation, to younger players, keep that joy and passion. And I think what helped was having those years in my high school, those developmental years. And even in college, I played for a club team. We didn't have a college team. We had a women's college team, Division I, but we didn't have a men's team. So it was just a bunch of players, a club team, that we would play at other schools and whatnot. It was knowing that you're doing this because you're passionate for it. You love it. You enjoy doing it. So playing with 8 players for 2 years in high school, and then finally having a decent team and having enough players, but it was never result driven. It was always like, this is something that allows us to impartition something to others. So that's kind of what was always my thing. It's, how can I impact players and give them a chance to be successful in whatever it is they want to do through soccer. And that's what led me to wanting to be a coach. It was that, like, I want to impact players and help them be successful. Not everyone that I coach is going to be a professional soccer player or a collegiate soccer player. I have to be mindful of that, but in no way does that dictate how much I give to them and how much I can help them and develop them to whatever it is they want to do on the pitch or off the pitch.
Absolutely. So off of your high school experience, what college did you end up going to?
I attended South Carolina State University in Orangeburg on a band and academic scholarship. Nothing to do with sports.
Misa, what instrument did you play?
Alto saxophone.
Do you still have it?
Yes. Not the one I had then. I have a new one, but I still have my saxophone.
Well, we need to see this. Is it in reaching distance where you can pull it out and start playing right now?
No. It's in an outside location. Too much time wasting for this. Maybe we'll do another video where I'll play something.
Oh my gosh, that's like the dream. Or you bring it to the field one day and start playing. or after, but before a big game to fire the team up, get
No,
everyone going?
we want to motivate them to do well, not to run away. So I don't know if it's a good idea.
So you're in Orangeburg. You're at South Carolina State. And what'd you major in?
My intended major at first was business. I spent 2 days in that major, and then I switched to music education.
Oh, awesome.
So that was my desired major. Obviously, I didn't finish school because I had a child, and I had to come home and provide for my daughter, who's now 13.
Sure.
I had to come home and work, and I'm a dad, so I have to provide for my family. So that's what took me out of school, and then I started focusing on providing for my daughter at that time.
Sure. So coming home, where was coming home at then?
Hardyville.
Okay. And
Hardyville, I was still there.
Okay, cool, gotcha. And what were you doing then? What were you coaching soccer at that time, or?
Nope. Nope. Soccer was at that point when my daughter was born.
How old were you?
19.
Oh wow, 19.
Mm-hmm. So at that point, soccer was the least of my concerns because I needed to provide for my daughter and who was then my girlfriend.
Sure.
So I moved back home. We're also in the process of getting my citizenship, which is another reason why I had to leave school, because it was denied because paperwork was missing. So I was deemed no longer able to be in the country. Then we had to reapply and all that. That's a whole nother story for another time. So I had to get a job, and my parents were actually moving to Florida. But because I was here, then I chose to stay here. So I actually got a job at a gas station. For about 2 years, I was working there, right here in Hardyville on Exit 5. And then after that, I got a job at a furniture store in Bluffton. And I spent most of my time there. And at the furniture store was kind of where the coaching started coming in, because I had a stable job. I had a decent wage at that time. I was able to provide for my family. I was in a leadership role at this furniture store. So now the thought of maybe getting involved in soccer again came up, and it was more so like playing men's league.
Sure.
That was the thought, but then the thought of coaching, an opportunity presented itself that allowed me to start coaching.
Oh, awesome. So at the furniture store, there were leadership opportunities?
Yes, I started off as the lowest position in the store, which is an assistant delivery guy. And then I quickly worked my way up to pretty much being the head collections guy, and then the assistant manager. And then I eventually became the manager running the place. And that was pretty much my role there. Manager for a while. I was 24 at the time, 23, too young to be a manager. But stepped in. It was a very crazy situation that happened at that time at the job. And we had a big national competitor that was in the area. And so pretty much it became where we brought somebody else in that had way more experience than me and was able to handle it much better than I could. So then I became kind of the number 2 guy again. But during that time is when that's when my coaching career would have started pretty much.
Okay, so you start working at a high school then, or you go the club route? What was your,
I went high school, so I was still working at the furniture store full time. And ironically, my best friend is the band director at Beaufort High during this time. And he sends me an email. And at this point, I'm with who's my wife now. We're together at this point. And he sends me an email saying that Beaufort High is looking for a boys JV coach.
So we're talking like 2013? 2013?
12 or 13, yeah. This is my... Says, I'm looking for a JV coach. If you know anybody, please share my info, have them contact me. So I see it. He's like, hey, I think, you do soccer. You're a soccer guy. Hey, here's this, are you interested? So I look at the email, and back then I wasn't as self-confident as I am now. So I instantly said no. I was like, no, I'm not. I don't know anybody in Beaufort. I'm from Jasper County. I have no coaching experience. I gave myself a million reasons as to why I wouldn't do it. And my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, she was the one that kind of motivated me and said, apply. What's going choice. He pretty much said, can you come in today for an interview? Yeah. So I went there, and it was early. What formation do you like to run? This. Okay. Why do you want to coach? This, and this. Great. Can you start? Yeah. When? Now. Okay. And, so I became the boys JV coach at Buford High School. And that was my first ever coaching job.
Right. So amazing stuff. Did you guys win any games that year? Did you have any success?
We finished 6-1. So the team I took over was very new, all new players. The previous team had already gone up to varsity or didn't come back and play. We weren't as successful as a previous team because they had more talent than we did. But it was I think out of, this is how you know I'm a brand new coach, I think I had 25 players on the roster. And
wow, you were subbing a lot.
Yeah. And out of those 25, maybe half had some soccer playing experience. At this point, there were not many clubs in the area. You had Storm at the time, which some of our better players played at Storm. And then you had a small 3v3 group I think it was called Buford Crew. That's all the outside soccer we had. Everyone else just played either with their family, friends, or whatever. So it was a lot of very inexperienced players. But it was great because I got to learn how to coach. So Coach Rollins was essential in that we would do our sessions together. I was by his side. He would, teach me the do's and don'ts in a training session. Just pretty much grabbed my hand and pretty much gave me baby steps into coaching, but trusted me enough to give me the freedom to go out there and fail. To try something that didn't work, to find myself in tight situations. So he was very instrumental in that first year. And then during that season, it's where I met Coach Dan Waymont, who at the time was the select director at Storm Soccer Academy. He was helping out Bluffton High School coaching as well at that time. And we played Bluffton. And I remember this game because we beat Bluffton. That was one of the few times we actually beat Bluffton. So I beat Dan, even though I wasn't in it. And after the game, Coach Rollins, Coach Fox, who was a coach at Bluffton at the time, Dan and myself, we talked for maybe 45 minutes after the game. And soccer was maybe 10% of the conversation. The rest was about life, the players, teenagers, just these days of how we can help players. And then Dan got my number that day. And then like a few days later, he reached out and said, hey, I'm the select director at Storm Soccer Academy, and I'd love to bring you on board next fall to be one of our coaches. Me at the time, I said, let me call you back. And I spoke to my girlfriend. I was like, hey, this happened. I can't club coach. That's high level. That's top level. I can't do that. I'm the new coach. And she was like, no, go for it. And so Dan was the one that brought me into club coaching. And Dan is Brad will probably enjoy this more than anybody else. All my admin stuff and how I manage things, a lot of the credit goes to what I was able to do at my furniture store job and the admin and all that with personnel and staff and budgets and all that. But on the coaching side and the soccer side, a lot of that I credit Dan, because Dan was absolutely, perfect to me in how he was about communicating with parents, with players, with coaches, and how he managed and controlled everything. And he also helped me on the field. The first 2 months that I trained with him, we trained together at the same field. He was running the sessions, and little by little, he was saying, all right, can you handle this session? Can you run this drill? Here's what we're going to focus on. He would send me all the drills beforehand and explain to me. And then once he was like, all right, you're ready to let it go, all yours, he trusted me to go out there on my own, and gave me a pretty decent team, that had decent talent. And so a lot of, I credit him a lot, him and Coach Rollins a lot to being the coach that I am today.
So how did you learn, just going on top of that, I have a good feeling with the Coach Rollins piece where he was on the field showing you the ins and outs, how to talk to the kids, when to stop the session, what activities to pick, things like that. And I think Dan helped out with that as well. On the emailing, communication with parents, relationship building, telling people, about our program and what it's all about and shining it in such a positive light, these things you do now that are like second nature to you. How did you see Dan doing that? Like, did he bring you into his house to show you on his computer how he was doing stuff? Or, how did all that go down?
No, every email he sent, he would tag me in it. So the emails he sent to his team, and mind you, he's coaching a top level team at this time. I think it was the 96, 97 boys.
Yeah, they were in Region 3 Premier League, right?
Yeah, and so they were challenged at this time, and they were going to get promoted after this season.
First team we ever had playing that league out of our club.
Yep, and so I'm coaching an open league team, which is 2 or 3 levels below what the level that he has. And the first thing he would do is like, look, trust in your abilities. The players will listen to you and they'll trust you, and you'll do a good job. So he gave me that confidence and the freedom to go out there and fail, find success and find failure. It's almost like how we coach players now, right? You don't want to walk them to the water. You don't want to lead them to the water and say, drink it. You want to walk them and guide them and say, all right, what could you do now? So how he coached and developed his players is kind of what he did with me as a coach. And so he was on the communication piece. He was always emailing parents and tagging me on the weekly recaps. And here's the plan for this weekend. Here's what we're going to do. Here's our plan for this week in training, to the parents and the players. And even seeing the relationship he had with players on the field, where players would come and joke with him and talk to him about non-soccer related stuff. To me, that was huge. That they could trust him and they would trust his advice and counsel. But even when he would send out coaches, I was a part-time coach at the time. So this was a second job for me. This was an extracurricular job for me. And he understood that. So he understood my working requirements, being a manager at a furniture store, and my family requirements, having 2 kids at this point. And so it was comforting to see that he was very understanding. And every time a parent had a concern, if I had an issue, hey, a parent called me about this or a parent's emailing me about this, he had no hesitation in saying, okay, Misa, here's what I would do. Here's my advice to you. Here's something I sent out. Here's how we would handle this, and it was never do this. It was always, here's how I would handle it. What do you think? Or even if I screwed up and did something wrong, it was, hey, I like what you did there, but here's what we can do better. So it was never a situation of like a dictatorship per se. He was always coaching and developing. And it was always ways that I can learn and apply and implement into me as a person, as a coach, that would help me better on and later on in the long run.
And I do see now that you're in charge of a staff where you had 4 coaches with you on the Magenta side and a couple coaches. I guess you're Dan's boss now, right? Since he's doing our program in the PBA program that we do over near.
Small world. When I reached out to him, I was like, whoa, the roles have changed. But it's crazy because one thing that Dan and Coach Rollins and even other coaches, like with you, when I dealt with you when you were at Storm, one thing you guys were always huge on was the title didn't matter. It was your ability. So if you came to watch one of my games, you were there observing and advising. Dan was the same way as was Coach Rollins, where it was never, well, I'm your boss, so you're gonna do this. It's always, hey, here's what we can do. And so that came a long way. And so now me being in the position that I'm in here, having coaches under me, it's something that I always try and do. So even with Dan coming over and coaching our PDA, the first thing I told him is to take care of my kids. I was the first coach in that program. I love those kids, take care of them. But trusting that he knows what to do, and the fact that it shows how Dan is as a man, that, he has the courage to say, hey, I'm under you now. What do I need to do? And whatever the case may be, even though he's the one that brought me here. I'm here because of him. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be where I am today. So that's kind of small world crazy, but it just shows the kind of person that he is.
Sure. And now he has 2 daughters that are playing in the program. And
hey, Charlotte.
They're probably at home working on their turns right now, is my guess.
Oh, most likely working their turns and drinking tea.
Maybe dribbling at each other, some 1v1s, all kinds of fun Tormenta activities, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing guy. I wish I could talk him to coming back in full time. Hint, hint, Dan. But he's got a good thing going on right now with his job. So So now you're at Storm, which turns into Tormenta. You also coach a high school team, May River. You're the head coach of that program. You've had tons of success. I'll let you talk about the success, but how did that come about where you get that opportunity?
The school was opening, and they were pretty much any new school were looking for coaches. So I applied with the understanding and plan that I just wanted to interview for the job. I wanted to see what it was like to interview for a head coach.
No expectations.
None. So as a JV coach, I was happy at Buford. My tenure at Buford High School JV team was the most successful. I think the second year we went like 11-2. And then my final year, all my players got called up to varsity, which was a JV coach. I had a brand new program. I think we finished 5-7 that year because I had so many kids that didn't know how to play soccer. We were starting to get more kids into the club, playing at Storm at the time, which is the only club at the moment. And then there was other clubs that were starting to come about. So I applied with the intention of just wanting to get the experience of interviewing for a varsity job because eventually I wanted to be a varsity coach. My perfect scenario was being in Buford when Coach Rollins retires, I come and take over what he's done.
Sure.
So I interview for the job, with Coach Macy, who's the AD there. And then I don't hear back for a week or two. So I told my wife, I was like, well, I got the experience in, I was super nervous. I laid out I had a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan when I went to the interview, what I wanted to do and the culture I wanted to build. And so I didn't think I was gonna get a call back because I didn't have the experience. I was only a JV coach and I was a club coach, but I was only coaching second teams. And you'll always hear me say second teams in this because that's a whole nother topic. But he gives me a call back and he's like, hey, we'd like to offer you the job for the head varsity coach. And I said, can I call you back? So I called my wife and she's like, you accepted it? No.
Did you jump around on the in-between? Or
Yeah, I was like, I'm not ready for that. It's a brand new program. There's no history. I have to start from scratch. I don't know if I can do this. She's like, you got this, go ahead. So then the next call I made was to Coach Rollins, who was my varsity coach at the time. And he pretty much said, well, here, I'll make it easy for you, you're fired. So I was like, okay. So I took the job, and the first year we went 9-7. We went to the second round of playoffs. We had some, we beat the number 10 team in the first round that year, and then we had some good games, but we also lost. Like Bluffton was a powerhouse at the time. That year they went to the state championship. We lost 6-1 to them. Academic Magnet, which is a Charleston school, is also a powerhouse. We lost 6-0. A lot of growing pains, and it was. I think we had 18 players and maybe 14 were freshmen. So it was a very, very young team. And then the following year, we went 20-4. So a complete turnaround. We at one point we were number 1 in the state. We were a top 50 program in the nation, and we made it to the third round of the playoffs, lost to Bishop England, and then, last year, our third year, we went 20 wins, 3 losses, 1 draw, and we actually ended up winning the state championship last year.
Amazing stuff. When I saw that immediately, that's when I had to get you on staff, Misa, with all this winning happening, and your humbleness about it all, and your just willingness to put in hard work and do the hard things that matter to create these experiences for May River, for Tormenta kids. It's so meaningful to families and the kids. It's that whole piece when you look back. You're working with a kid when they're 18. When they're 38, are they going to look back and still be using some of those pieces of learning that you gave them when they were in high school, 10, 15, 20 years out? And that's what I always look at as something that's super important when I'm trying to work with kids or work with staff or anything along those lines, is what are they going to take out of this that they can use, not today, with maybe that's a pretty neat turn you got going on there, or that's a great way to strike the ball when you're shooting on goal, but is there something small that I continuously do that will allow them to be successful later in life? Through your journey, you go from you're a JV coach, you go from a non-soccer coach to a JV coach for a couple of years to coaching some second teams. under Dan, and then now you're a high school coach, then you're eventually running club programs. What are the things that you learn to get across to the kids along the way?
They have to realize that you're looking out for their best interest and that you're giving your absolute best, regardless of what their goals and aspirations are. Whether I'm coaching a top level player, which I've been blessed to have been able to do in many different levels, or I'm coaching, the Sweet Feet kids at cross schools, or, our professional development, our player development academy kids at Bluffton, which are 3 to 4 year olds, and we're running around learning how to kick a ball. My passion can't change for why I coach. And the reason I coach is because I want to impact these players' lives, to help them achieve their goals, help them achieve whatever it is they want to do in their careers, whether it's play professionally or go to a collegiate program, whether it's Division I, Division II, D3, doesn't matter the level, or just make their varsity team, or just they enjoy playing. They enjoy the culture, the atmosphere. I want to impartition something to them that they can take and carry on years down the line, no matter what they're doing. So for me, being in contact with players that I haven't coached in years and ages, players reaching out or me reaching out, checking in and saying, hey coach, how are you? I'm going through this in my life. Can you help me? Or, hey coach, this happened. I remember when you said this or when you did that. Those things are so much more memorable than all the successes that I've found as a coach. Always work hard, always push hard. So it's a lot of things that we expect our players to do on the field. They can do off the field and other entities in their lives. And I think sometimes some of the players don't realize that or can't make that connection. So for me, it's always, the things I teach them on the field, about, not giving up. In my high school program, our slogan is never settle. And I kind of say that with everybody, it's always push for better, push for greater. But, just applying these things that we learn on the field and on the pitch at practice or in games to what you do in life, to whatever it is you want to do in life. And for me, that's the most important thing, having good character, being respectful. When times are hard, when you're able to see who you really are and what you really trust on, what comes out. So in a game, when it's a 1-0 game and you're trying to win the game and the team's attacking you like crazy, or the other way, you're trying to win the game, it's 1-1, 2 minutes left, and you're dead tired and you're trying to push through. These are traits that we can apply in life. And for me, that's how I look to implement everything I do in coaching. So, whether it's for a game or to get through the season to qualify for state cup, or, make the playoffs or win our region in high school, or, have kids to get signed by collegiate programs for the club, or a kid that's in the second team to get promoted to the top team, next season or in the off season. There's things that we teach that we can apply to every aspect of our life. And that's kind of how I view coaching is. I'm not just impacting what they can do on the field, but I'm impacting what they're able to do off the field that can help them for years to come.
That's just such amazing. And I know you're doing a little bit of that now that we can't see the kids on our teams. We can't be at the fields like we would want to, creating that regular experience for them where they're training, playing games, constantly improving. What are some of the, coaching, relationship building things that you're doing during this time of coronavirus?
So for my club teams and even my high schoolers, where I'm doing weekly Zoom sessions where we all come together. So for the club teams, we're learning about the fundamentals of our tactical formation and our club, Tormenta FC, our style of play. So players understanding their roles in the field within a formation and what they're supposed to do. So even though we can't be on the field, why not use this time to give them the tactical knowledge and awareness and understanding, so when we go back on the field, they can be very smart players alongside being very good technical players. So that's what we've been doing with the 04s and 05s.
So how do you do that? Do you do that with a phone call or a conference call, or?
Yeah, I'm doing with Zoom. I send a video out, and every week at a certain time, we log into Zoom. I can see everybody. First thing we do is check on how everybody's doing. I gave all my players a task of learning a new hobby that they normally wouldn't do, so they can, do something else, whether it's cooking or cleaning, or, don't stay on your game system all day, but find something else that you normally wouldn't do. And so I check in with them first to see how they're doing. What are they doing? What hobby have they picked up? How are we helping around the house? How are we learning from this? And then we go into a session of tactics. So I email them, information I want them to study. And so we come in, they already know, and I just kind of, enhance them and show them, with videos that we have and different things that I share with them, for them to get better. So even though I can't be out on the field with them, helping them get better with their technical ability, as a coach, you can still help them improve their tactical knowledge and understanding the game. So when we are back on the field, they already know what to expect in their roles and their positions and what we're looking to do as a club, as a team, and as a coach.
Has that been pretty well attended? The kids are liking it?
Yeah. So, we have most of the players show up. The players who are unable to show up for a reason, they'll text me. I'm recording the session, so for those who don't make it, I can email it out to them so they can still see it and still feel like they're a part of the team. And then there's always other things that we do, whether I'm texting with the boys and checking in with them or cracking jokes. With my high school team, I did a FIFA tournament one time where we all just got online and played FIFA, just to keep the connection going, and maintain some kind of normalcy and communication and relationships. So, we have to be creative as coaches, as our players do. It's just putting in that extra effort to say, okay, how can I still be able to impact these guys during this time where I'm not able to do it how I normally would do it.
Right. So the positive relationships still keep coming. It's a trait I see running through whatever you do. And, whether it's with your family or with a club team or with a high school team or when you're working with adults in your role as a leader. You've come a long way in the last 8 years in the soccer world where you're, going from a JV coach that's never done it before to working in the club and taking on a high school and coaching the top teams in the club. And so you've seen it all. And I think you have an extremely bright future in the game. What do you see for your future the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What's that going to look like as far as your goals and what you're trying to achieve?
Obviously keep growing my education, my coaching education. You can never stop learning the beautiful game. So that's something I look to constantly do. 3 to 5 years, a long time. Hopefully be in a position where I can help mold the future players of this nation, and the future people, not just so much in the field, but off the field. Being a part of this club helps me, be able to do the things I do and do it well because we share very similar philosophies, you and I, Brad, while we coach and whatnot. So just continue growing and, eventually having, hopefully still here, where we're, achieving the dream of what club soccer should be, what youth soccer should be for all players, not just our top level players who play in the NPL league or may go on to play at higher levels, but our players who may play in the state league, our players who may play on the second, third, or fourth team, as we continue to grow in numbers, or the players who are playing rec, letting them know that there's lessons we can grow from this and not just let it be measured by the level and caliber of player that you are. So, continue growing in my craft, continue impacting lives, in my role where I am, where I can be an influential part in how the club is structured and where we want the club to go and helping the club achieve, what our ultimate dreams are, in 5 years from now, from where we are today to where we want to be in 5 years. Right.
And yeah, that's the dream, isn't it? Just trying to grow numbers, grow the club. Where do you see the high school work heading? In 10 years, you'll have 8 championships. I mean, is that kind of what you're thinking here?
No, that's going to be hard. We're moving up a classification. So my 5-year plan was to be a competitive program in the state. It was never an intention to win a state championship. So we went ahead of the curve. So for my high school program, I want us to be, in South Carolina, I want us to be in the same conversation as Wando High School, which is one of the most successful programs over there with Coach Tisdale. With those kids who play up there. Bishop England, who's the most winning program in the state in championships. I want our programs to be up there, and not just on the quality of soccer that we play, but the quality of program that we are and players with character, and how we play and how we comport ourselves. I'm proud of the fact that last year we were the only boys team in the state that got the Sportsmanship Award in South Carolina, that got Scholar All-Americans, that we were, a Team GPA award, and, that because of our success, we won the Pinnacle Award, which gives out United Soccer Coaches, which is only to programs that are very successful on the field, very successful in the classroom, and have a sportsmanship award. So I take pride in all that. So 10 years, I don't know how many state championships we're gonna have. I don't want to give that number out, but I want our program to be respected, and that people know when they play Mid River High School that you're gonna get a very good, well-disciplined coach team that's gonna give you a fight whether we're winning or losing.
Yeah, fantastic, Misa. This conversation was awesome. Went real deep into your, how you grew up, where you came from, what you're doing now, and what that story is on the in-between. And I think the more that our families can know about our coaches, the better relationships they're going to have as we go along. I just think it's a natural occurrence. When you know more about somebody, you get along better. But it was a wonderful conversation. It was a no-brainer that I hired you on and put you in a leadership role last year. And throughout this entire year, I've loved working with you, and I can't wait till this is over, till I can go get a coffee and you can get a smoothie.
Yes.
And we can, talk some more shop.
Absolutely. Great smoothies.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. Say hi to the family for me and stay safe, okay?
You too. Stay safe. Thank you guys for watching. Brad, thanks for doing this. Everybody stay safe, stay strong, stay committed. We'll come out of this stronger than ever.
Yeah, man. See you soon, Misa.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.